Hey everyone, welcome back to the Thylacine Studios podcast. In this episode, I want to talk about some of the online features in Siralim Ultimate and how I've decided to change the way they work based on your feedback. So, when I started working on Siralim Ultimate, I envisioned a game that would be ever changing. The idea was for there to be so many moving parts in the game that you could play it non-stop and never run out of things to do because there would always be some new event to keep you occupied. And I still like that idea and plan to move forward with it, but some of the features that I plan to have online components have turned out to not be so great. And I feel like I was forcing online functionality into features that didn't really need them. So I want to talk about what those features are and how I plan to change them in Siralim Ultimate. First, you might remember that I revealed the concept of world bosses a couple months ago. These were supposed to be giant bosses that would spawn on a timer, and the timer would be contained on a server, so every single person playing the game would have their game invaded by the same world boss at the same time as all their players. Then players would all find that world boss and defeat it, which would help to fend off this kind of invasion. After the world boss was defeated by enough players, everyone who participated would receive a reward. In the end, I don't think the online functionality for world bosses really needs to exist. I don't want players to be at the mercy of the game deciding when you can fight a boss. Like, imagine if you happen to be asleep or at work or school while a certain world boss spawns, and by the time you're able to play the game, it's already gone. That would feel pretty bad. So I've decided to remove all online components from world bosses. Now, I haven't designed the specifics about how you'll encounter them now, but world bosses will still be huge creatures that you'll fight that have unique mechanics associated with them. These bosses take up all 6 creature slots for the enemy, and each slot contains a different body part. That might sound kind of weird, so I'm going to give you an example. Hydradox is one of the world bosses you'll encounter in Siralim Ultimate. It's a giant hydra that is so large that it takes up the entire battlefield, so it doesn't have room for allies or anything like that. It'll start with 5 heads, 1 in each slot, plus a body, which consumes the remaining slot. So all the heads will be kind of attached to the central body. The body is immune to damage, and it spends all of its time buffing the heads and increasing their stats and otherwise providing support for it. When you kill a head, 2 more spawn in its place, which means they can now attack, cast spells, and employ all other effects 2 times. When you kill those 2 heads, 3 new ones will spawn, and when you finally kill those 3 heads, no more will spawn. Since there are 5 head slots, and each one can have up to 3 heads, you might end up fighting 15 heads at once if you carelessly mow them all down at once with, area of effect spells and traits and things like that. So the optimal strategy for fighting this particular boss is to tackle 1 head slot at a time. Now, I feel like I rambled a little bit too much there and got into the specifics a little bit too much, but I know a lot of you have been really curious about how world bosses work, so I figured I would just give you a straightforward example about how unique the mechanics are by comparison to normal bosses. But if you're still confused, don't worry about it. The mechanics of how each fight work will be explained in-game, and they'll probably be better explained, so it'll make a lot more sense when you're actually playing. Anyway, some of the rewards you'll earn from world bosses include exclusive spell gem recipes, and there will be 5 of those available from each boss, exclusive trait materials for artifacts, cosmetics, and much more. So that's how I'm thinking world bosses will work now. No more online functionality, and I think the feature will be better off for it. Next, I want to talk about Tavern Brawls. A while back, I asked everyone to fill out a survey regarding Tavern Brawls. The survey was very short, and it simply asked players how much they enjoy Tavern Brawls as they are in Siralim 3. Over 700 people replied to the survey, and your feedback is pretty clear to me. Most people hate them. And those of you who don't outright hate them simply don't care about them one way or another. In total, less than 10% of players said they like this feature. Unfortunately, Tavern Brawls are also one of the most obnoxious things for me to handle from a coding perspective, and there are so many little bugs associated with them, even in Siralim 3, that I feel like it's all held together with band-aids and chewing gum at this point. It's impossible for me to justify spending so much time on a feature that the majority of players dislike. And I have a really cool idea in mind that will replace Tavern Brawls. It won't feature PvP elements at all, but I still think you guys will really like it. It's still a little too early to announce the specifics of this yet, but I'm extremely confident that most of you will enjoy what I have in mind. I recognize that some of you really enjoyed Tavern Brawls, and I'm sorry that this feature won't make its way to Siralim Ultimate. It was a nice experiment, but it just proved that any form of PvP in the Siralim games is a really bad idea. I won't even get into all the flaws with Tavern Brawls right now because that's not the point of this episode, but it's something that I'll probably take a deep dive into at some point because I think it's a pretty interesting topic to explore from a game design perspective. Lastly, let's talk about Siralim Ultimate's event calendar. For those of you who don't know, there will be an in-game calendar that is tied to real-world time, and it lists all the events that will happen in the game. Siralim 3 had a lot of events that rewarded exclusive creatures, materials, cosmetics, and things like that. These events were very well received by most players, but I didn't like the fact that there was no way for players to see when an event would happen. A lot of people would check Facebook or Twitter several days after an event ended, only to find out that they missed out on a wardrobe costume, and that's a pretty big problem to me. So in Siralim Ultimate, there's going to be a calendar that will tell you when an event is coming up. I'm even planning to add optional push notifications to the mobile version of the game so that you can opt in to reminders about events on your phone. So far, I've repeated what most of you already know about the calendar. The big change I'm planning for this, though, is that I don't want to tie any exclusive creatures to events anymore. In Siralim 3, there were 4 major holiday events that offered 5 or 6 exclusive creatures each. It was fun, but again, it felt so bad to miss out on those creatures. So for all the events in Siralim Ultimate, including the big holiday events such as Halloween, rewards will be entirely cosmetic. There will be creature skins, decorations, things like that. And there might be a few exclusive trait materials for you to acquire because I don't think that's quite as punishing as missing out on a creature. But even then, I'm really hesitant to do that. I think time-based rewards should all be cosmetic. And I know I've mentioned this before, but I also have an idea in mind to allow players to manipulate the calendar in case they missed out on an event. But I'm still not ready to announce the specifics on that. So that's pretty much all I have to say about online functionality in Siralim Ultimate. I think these changes will make for a much better experience for everyone. Whether you agree or disagree, I want to hear your thoughts about it. The game obviously isn't even in alpha testing yet, so there's a lot of time to iterate on things like this to make it as player-friendly as possible. Thank you guys for listening, and I will see you next time.